Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, seekers of truth and meaning, today I stand before you to unravel a profound truth, a quiet whisper that has the power to transform every corner of your life. The title of my speech, Be Silent, You Will Get Everything in Your Life, is not a promise of material wealth or fleeting success, but an invitation to a deeper, more expansive way of being. Silence, my friends, is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of possibility. It is the fertile ground where courage, clarity, and connection take root. Let us embark on this journey together, exploring the layers of silence and how it can unlock everything your heart dares to dream. Imagine, for a moment, the chaos of your daily life. The notifications buzzing, the demands piling up, the inner chatter that never seems to pause. We live in a world that glorifies noise of opinions, of busyness, of constant striving. But what if, in the midst of all this clamor, the answers you seek are waiting in the stillness? Silence is not about retreating from the world. It's about diving deeper into it. It's about listening to the soft voice of your intuition, the one that knows who you are and what you're capable of. Silence is the space where you meet yourself. Let's begin with what silence is not. Silence is not weakness. It is not passivity or surrender. It is not the act of shrinking or hiding. No. Silence is strength in its purest form. It is the courage to pause when the world screams for you to act. It is the wisdom to listen when others demand you speak. It is the audacity to trust that you don't need to fill every moment with words or actions to prove your worth. Silence is the choice to stand in your truth even when the noise around you begs you to conform. When you embrace silence, you create space for clarity. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed. Maybe it was a decision you couldn't make, a relationship that felt tangled, or a dream that seemed out of reach. In those moments, the temptation is to push harder, to talk louder, to do more. But what if instead you chose to be still? What if you let the noise settle like dust after a storm? In that stillness, you begin to see what truly matters. You begin to hear the quiet voice of your heart guiding you toward what is yours. Silence is also a teacher of presence. How often do we rush through life, chasing the next moment before we fully lived the one we're in? We're so busy planning, worrying, or regretting that we miss the beauty of now. Silence anchors us. It pulls us back to this breath, this heartbeat, this fleeting second. When you sit in silence, you realize that this moment is enough. You are enough. And in that realization, you find the courage to let go of the need to control every outcome. Let me share a story. Years ago, I found myself at a crossroads. My life was full of achievements, relationships, and endless to-do lists, but it felt empty. I was running on fumes, chasing a version of success that left me exhausted. One evening, overwhelmed and unsure, I sat alone in my living room, turned off every device, and just listened. No music, no distractions, just the sound of my own breath. In that silence, I heard something I hadn't in years: myself. I heard my fears, my desires, my quiet hopes. That moment of silence didn't solve everything, but it gave me the clarity to take the next step. This is the power of silence. It reconnects you to your inner compass. In a world that constantly pulls you outward, silence pulls you inward. It reminds you that you don't need external validation to know your worth. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to perform to be loved. Silence strips away the layers of expectation and reveals the truth. You are already whole. But let's be honest, silence can be uncomfortable. Sitting with your thoughts without the buffer of noise can feel like standing naked in front of a mirror. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, the doubts, the regrets, the unhealed wounds. Yet it is in this discomfort that growth happens. Silence is not about escaping pain. It's about leaning into it. It's about saying, I see you, I feel you, and I'm not afraid to sit with you. When you practice silence, you cultivate resilience. You learn that you can face your fears without running, that you can hold your pain without breaking, that you can sit with uncertainty without losing hope. This resilience spills over into every area of your life. It makes you a better listener, a more compassionate friend, a more grounded leader, because when you've learned to be still with yourself, you can be still with others. Silence also teaches us the art of surrender, not surrender in the sense of giving up, but surrender in the sense of letting go. We spend so much of our lives gripping tightly to control over our careers, our relationships, our futures. But the truth is, so much of life is beyond our control. Silence invites us to loosen our grip. It whispers, you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to fix everything. Trust the process. In this surrender, we find freedom. Freedom from the need to be perfect. Freedom from the pressure to have it all figured out. Freedom to be human with all our messiness and beauty. Silence reminds us that we don't have to earn our place in the world. We belong simply because we exist. And when you truly believe that, everything in your life begins to shift. Let's talk about relationships for a moment. How often do we fill our conversations with words afraid of the pause, afraid of what the silence might reveal? But silence in relationships is a gift. It's the space where true connection happens. When you sit in silence with someone you love, without the need to fill the void, you're saying, I'm here with you fully. I don't need you to perform or entertain me. Your presence is enough. I've seen this in my own life. There was a time when I thought love meant constant communication, constant reassurance. But over time, I learned that the deepest moments of connection often come in the quiet. A shared glance, a hand held in silence, a moment of simply being together. These are the moments that bind us. Silence allows us to truly see each other, beyond the words, beyond the mask. Silence also fosters empathy. When you practice listening, not just to others, but to yourself, you become attuned to the unspoken. You notice the quiver in someone's voice, the hesitation in their smile, the weight they carry in their shoulders. Silence makes you a safe space for others because you've learned to be a safe space for yourself. You've learned that not every question needs an answer. Not every pain needs a solution. Sometimes the greatest gift you can offer is your quiet presence. Now let's address the practical side of silence. How do you bring this into your life when the world feels so loud? Start small. Find 5 minutes in your day to sit quietly. No phone, no music, no distractions. Just you and your breath. Notice what comes up. Your thoughts, your emotions, your resistance. Don't judge it, just observe. This simple practice, done consistently, will change the way you move through the world. You can also practice silence in moments of conflict. The next time you're tempted to react, to defend, to argue, pause. Take a breath. Let the silence hold you. In that pause, you'll find the space to respond with intention rather than react out of habit. You'll find the courage to speak your truth without wounding others. Silence is not about suppressing your voice. It's about choosing when and how to use it. Silence can also be a creative force. Some of the greatest ideas, the most profound art, the most meaningful work comes from moments of stillness. When you quiet the noise of the world, you make room for inspiration. You allow your mind to wander, to dream, to connect dots in ways it couldn't in the chaos. If you're feeling stuck, uninspired, or lost, try sitting in silence. Let the answers emerge from within. Well, let me share another story. A friend of mine, a writer, once told me she was struggling with a project. She had been forcing herself to write day after day, but the words felt flat. One morning, she decided to stop. She sat by a window, closed her eyes, and let herself be still. For an hour, she did nothing but listen to the birds outside, to her own breath, to the quiet stirrings of her heart. When she returned to her work, the words flowed. She told me it was like the silence unlocked something I didn't even know was there. This is what silence does. It unlocks your creativity, your courage, your compassion. It unlocks the parts of you that have been buried under the noise. And when you tap into those parts, you begin to live more fully, more authentically, more expansively. Silence is also a form of self-care. In a world that glorifies hustle, choosing silence is a radical act of love for yourself. It's saying, I deserve to rest. I deserve to listen to my own needs. I deserve to exist without proving my worth. When you give yourself permission to be still, you replenish your energy, your spirit, your hope. You remind yourself that you are not a machine. You are a human, worthy of care and tenderness. Let's talk about the collective power of silence. Imagine a world where we all practiced moments of stillness, where we listened before we spoke, paused before we acted, reflected before we judged. Imagine the understanding that could emerge, the conflicts that could be avoided, the connections that could be deepened. Silence is not just a personal practice, it's a communal one. It's a way of showing up for each other, of creating space for everyone's voice to be heard. In my own journey, I've found that silence has a ripple effect. When I choose to be still, to listen, to pause, it affects the people around me. My calm becomes their calm. My presence becomes their comfort. My clarity becomes their inspiration. Silence is contagious in the best possible way. It invites others to slow down, to breathe, to connect. But let's not romanticize silence. It's not a magic fix. It won't erase your problems or make life perfect. There will be days when silence feels impossible, when the noise of the world or your own mind feels too loud. That's okay. Silence is a practice, not a destination. It's about showing up again and again, even when it's hard, even when you only manage a moment of stillness. That moment matters. One of the greatest gifts of silence is perspective. When you step back from the noise, you see the bigger picture. You see the patterns in your life, the habits that no longer serve you, the dreams you've been too afraid to pursue. Silence gives you the space to ask the big questions. What do I want? Who am I becoming? What is my purpose? And it gives you the courage to answer them. Silence also teaches us gratitude. In the quiet, you notice the small things, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the laughter of a child, the kindness of a stranger. You realize how much you have, how much you've been given. Gratitude doesn't thrive in noise. It flourishes in stillness. When you practice silence, you cultivate a heart that sees abundance, even in the midst of struggle. Let's talk about courage again, because silence requires it. It takes courage to be still when the world demands action. It takes courage to listen to your own heart when others are shouting their opinions. It takes courage to trust that you don't need to prove yourself to be worthy. But this courage is what sets you free. It's what allows you to live a life that is yours, not someone else's. Silence is also a form of trust. Trust in yourself, trust in the universe, trust in the unfolding of your life. When you choose silence, you're saying, I don't have to force every outcome. I don't have to control every moment. I trust that what is meant for me will find me. This trust is not passive, it's active. It's the choice to show up, to do your part, and to let go of the rest. In the silence, you discover your power. Not the power to dominate or control, but the power to create, to heal, to love. This is the power that comes from knowing who you are, from standing in your truth, from living with intention. Silence is where you find this power, and it's where you learn to wield it with grace. Let's talk about dreams for a moment. We all have dreams. Some we speak aloud, some we barely dare to whisper. Silence is where those dreams take shape. It's where you give yourself permission to imagine, to hope, to believe. In the quiet, you can hear the call of your deepest desires, and you can find the courage to follow them. Silence is also a space for healing. So many of us carry wounds from our past, from our choices, from the words or actions of others. In the noise of life, it's easy to ignore these wounds, to push them down, to keep moving. But in silence, you create space for healing. You allow yourself to feel, to grieve, to forgive. You allow yourself to become whole again. One of the most beautiful things about silence is that it's always available to you. You don't need money, status, or special skills to access it. You don't need to be in a certain place or a certain stage of life. Silence is yours right now, in this moment. All it asks is your willingness to show up, to be still, to listen. Let me share one final story. A few years ago, I met a woman who had lost everything. Her job, her home, her sense of purpose. She felt broken, invisible, defeated. One day, she began walking to a nearby park every morning, sitting on a bench and simply being still. She didn't pray or meditate or try to fix anything. She just sat in silence. Over time, she began to notice small shifts. She felt lighter. She began to see possibilities she hadn't before. She started to believe in herself again. Silence didn't give her back what she'd lost, but it gave her something greater: hope. This is what silence does. It restores, it renews, it reminds you that no matter where you are, no matter what you've been through, you have the power to begin again. Silence is not about getting everything you want. It's about discovering everything you already have. As we near the end of this journey, I want to leave you with a challenge. This week, carve out a moment for silence. It doesn't have to be long, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you can manage. Sit with yourself. Listen to your breath, your heart, your truth. Notice what comes up. Notice what shifts. And then carry that silence with you. Let it guide your words, your actions, your dreams. Silence is not the absence of something. It's the presence of everything. It's the space where you find yourself, where you connect with others, where you touch the infinite. When you embrace silence, you open the door to everything your life can be. You find the courage to be who you are, the wisdom to know what matters, the love to live fully. My friends, the world is loud, but your heart is louder. Be silent and you will hear it. Be silent and you will find it. Be silent and you will get everything. Not in the way you might expect, but in the way your soul has always known. Thank you for listening, for being here, for choosing to show up. Now go forth and be still. The world is waiting for your quiet strength.